Hello, my name is Eliza Kamari, and I'm the Senior Associate Director in Off-Campus Study and Exchanges. In the previous videos, we have gone over a lot of the logistical things that you should consider before going off campus. In this video, we're going to talk a bit about being abroad and the things you can think about now to prepare yourself for arriving on site. As we've mentioned throughout, your semester abroad could begin with a quarantine. Some of you may have had this experience already when you arrived to Skidmore. The duration, location, and other logistics of this will be explained to you by your program. Obviously, this is an ever-evolving situation, and just because your country may or may not require a quarantine now to enter the country doesn't mean that's what it's going to look like in a few months when you arrive. So it's important to keep in touch with your program and make sure you understand what your expectations should be upon arrival. One thing that we know all of you will have in some shape or form is an orientation when you get on site. This is when your program and the on-site staff will go into more depth about things like health and safety, local laws, program policies, and things like how to set up your cell phone, where to shop for food, how to use public transportation, and on and on. Either as part of your quarantine or after that's complete, you'll move into your housing. Since all of you have different types of housing, we're not going to go into too much detail in this video about what that specific housing could look like. What I do want to highlight is that your housing abroad will not look like your housing at Skidmore. It could be that your housing is actually quite a bit further away than you're used to at Skidmore's campus. And it could be that it's not only further away from your classes, but it's also further away from where other students are housed. So you should set your expectations now that there will be some sort of commute to class if your classes are in person, and it'll likely be longer than what you're used to in Saratoga. Your commute could involve riding a bike, it could be taking the train, it could be a long walk to get there, or it could be a combination of all of those things. And again, that's something that they'll go over in your orientation. Heard us mention throughout these videos, your semester will look different because of the pandemic. There will be additional restrictions in place, perhaps similar to what you're experiencing at Skidmore, and these are going to shape your experience. You might be spending more time in your housing than you would in a normal semester. There could be specific transportation recommendations or guidance on how to best use transportation for social distancing. And again, they're going to go over all of this in your orientation, but you can always ask ahead of time if you're feeling anxious about that now. There will be new conduct rules in place for your health and for the health of your fellow students and for the health of your host community. For example, it's very likely that you won't be able to travel outside of your host country or that travel will be limited. There could be curfews set by the city. There could be mask requirements. There could be capacity limits on gatherings. I think it's important for you to consider now if you're going to be able to adhere to these rules and guidelines. If you don't think you can do that, then we don't think that you should go abroad. Just like at Skidmore, if you don't follow the policies that are put in place, it could result in you being removed from the program. On a positive note, there are some restrictions because of COVID that I think could actually make your experience richer. The tourism will likely be down in the location that you're going to, which means that you'll have greater access to your host city. And not being able to travel from country to country to country over your weekend or break gives you the opportunity to truly get to know the town that you've chosen to live in. Overall, I would encourage you to do research now to see how your program and your host country are currently dealing with COVID-19 so that you're as prepared as possible. Another thing to expect on site throughout the semester from time to time is that things aren't going to go well and they're not going to be what you expected. And part of that is just a normal semester. We all have bad days or bad weeks or times when things just don't go our way. But part of this could also be something that's often referred to as culture shock. So culture shock is the discomfort that we feel when we're encountering difference. You'll be living in a new culture with new norms and traditions and beliefs, and these might challenge the way you've always seen and lived in this world. And probably that's a big reason why you wanted to study abroad in the first place. Sometimes these differences are very obvious, and sometimes they're more subtle. Either way, the discomfort you feel is real and normal, and it can take the shape of sadness, anger, frustration, loneliness, and many other emotions. So what can you do about it? Number one, you could acknowledge that it's real. This is a real feeling, and it is normal. The other thing that we would really encourage you to do is engage with the place that you've chosen to live. Get out of your room, explore your new town, talk to your host family, your flatmates. If you have, coworkers at an internship, if you've been working on new language skills, try them out at a cafe, walk around in the park, go out, be in the country. In addition to that, it's important to take time to just observe. See how local people are behaving, take note of the things that confuse you so you can ask about it later. How are people dressed? What's the body language that you're noticing? During all of this, try to suspend judgment. Right now, you're just collecting data. You're in a new situation and you have a lot to learn. Different does not mean wrong. Ask questions. If there's something you don't understand, ask staff on your program or your host family. In addition to this, I would say take time to reflect. This could be journaling. It could just be sitting with your thoughts. And ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. It's okay that you don't understand what's going on. But remember in all of this to be kind to yourself. And if you feel that you're truly struggling, then you should ask for help. There are people on site who want to help you and likely have worked with other students that are going through something similar. To help prepare yourself for your upcoming semester, the best thing you can do is research. Research where you're going. Not just the details of your program and your city, but those are both really important things to research. But also look into the politics, the history, the current events, what's the pop culture. You don't have to wait until you physically get on site to start exploring your soon-to-be new home. One way you can do this is decide to start reading the local news now. You could also follow social media accounts from people who live in that host city. If you reach out to your program provider, they might be able to provide you with a list of books you should read or movies you should watch to get you ready and excited for where you're going to be living. One big thing to research and think about is how you will be perceived abroad, both as a student coming from the United States in the midst of a pandemic, but also looking at the many identities that you hold and how those could impact your experience. For example, for those of you who identify as an American and are currently living in the US, your national identity may not be something that comes to mind right away when you think of yourself. You might first think of one of the many other pieces that makes up who you are, like your ethnicity, your gender, your sexuality, and so on. When you go abroad, being an American could be something that is at the forefront of how people treat you or think of you, whether that's for better or for worse. And that way that they view you could be related to the recent election. It could be related to handling of the pandemic. It could be related to some history that our country, the US, has with the country that you're in. It could also be related to how Americans are portrayed in movies and in local news. Of course, this won't be the only aspect of your identity that'll play a role in your experience abroad. For example, for some of you, this will be the first time you're perceived as being the minority in terms of race and ethnicity. Or it could be the first time that you're considered to be in the majority. Take time to research your country's views, their customs, their laws before you go abroad. Look into what the gender roles are in your host country. What are the attitudes and laws regarding LGBTQ individuals? There are so many things you can look into, and this is not to overwhelm you. It's just to plant some seeds to start thinking about what to explore before you go. The more you know, the more empowered you can feel. Here are a few examples taken from one of our program partners' websites of questions you could explore. What is intersectionality, and how might different aspects of your identity intersect and play out during your time abroad? How will local legislation affect how you might express your identity in your host country? What is the perception of US citizens in your host country? What is the historical relationship between your host country and the United States? How is race, ethnicity viewed differently in your host country than it is in the United States? Again, this is just a jumping off point. If you need help getting started on finding resources, please let us know. In your OCSE handbook, which is in your My OCSE portal under learning content, there are a bunch of links and things to check out. Your program will also provide you with information as well. Okay, so wrapping up. Thank you for taking the time to watch this pre-departure video and hopefully all of the other pre-departure videos. As always, if you have questions, please get in touch with us. Please remember to read and sign your off-campus study student waiver and your student conduct pledge. Over the next few weeks, please don't forget to keep checking your email for updates from our office, but also from your program. We have walk-in advising throughout the break, and you can always set up an appointment to meet with us if you have questions. From all of us in off-campus study and exchanges, we want to say safe travels.